Tonight, we begin with an intercepted transmission, so devastating that Western intelligence officials described it as the kind of moment militaries fear more than defeat itself. Not a rumor, not propaganda, a voice. A Russian commander speaking directly to his superiors, captured in real time, saying two words no army ever once recorded. It's over. Not frustration, not exaggeration. A flat assessment that the defensive line Vladimir Putin personally described as unbreakable has collapsed completely. And when that line fell, Russian command didn't respond with counterattack orders. They didn't announce reinforcements. They didn't issue statements. They went silent. If you want to understand how wars actually end, not how they're announced, subscribe. Now, this is one of those moments. The intercepted call, obtained by Ukrainian intelligence and independently verified by NATO signals analysts, captures the instant a senior Russian officer acknowledged that the position Moscow poured everything into was gone in under 3 days. Tonight, we're breaking down what that call revealed, why analysts say it changes the trajectory of this war, and why silence from Moscow may be the loudest admission yet. Picture the scene. It's just after 2 a.m. along the Eastern Front. Inside a hastily assembled command post, a Russian colonel speaks into an encrypted radio. The connection crackles, the signal stutters. Ukrainian electronic warfare units are already monitoring the frequency, recording every second. The colonel is reporting to regional command. His job isn't to dramatize. It's to inform, to document what's happening before the situation collapses completely. The general on the other end asks for clarification. And then the colonel says it, the position is gone. We have nothing left to hold them. If you're still with us, hit subscribe, because what follows that sentence is where everything breaks. For weeks, there had been warning signs, not from Russian state media, not from official briefings, from the data. Western analysts watching the sector saw accelerated artillery expenditure, emergency redeployment of reserves from neighboring fronts, spikes in encrypted traffic indicating coordination problems, and then silence. And when Russian units go quiet after heavy activity, it usually means one thing: they're overwhelmed. The defensive line Putin called his final fortress didn't just bend, it failed. Let's be precise about what happened. Ukrainian forces launched a coordinated assault combining armored breakthroughs, precision artillery, and rapid infantry advances. Not probing attacks, a full-scale push designed to shatter the sector before reinforcements could respond. Within 48 hours, Ukrainian units penetrated the primary defensive line command, and control nodes were destroyed. Fortified positions that took months to build were neutralized or captured. Supply routes sustaining the entire sector were severed. When the Russian general asked about counterattack options, the response was blunt. With what? We have nothing. The reserves never arrived. The artillery is gone. That sentence alone told analysts everything. If this kind of frontline reality matters to you, subscribe again. These moments don't get announced at press conferences. Satellite imagery confirmed the damage almost immediately. Defensive structures flattened. Ukrainian formations advancing beyond previously fortified zones. NATO assessments distributed to allied capitals were unanimous. This wasn't a setback, it was a collapse. One senior Pentagon official described it as the moment the dam finally broke, because Russia didn't just lose ground. They lost the position they believed compensated for everything else: manpower shortages, equipment losses, and declining morale. Putin built his defensive doctrine on the belief that fortifications could replace forces he no longer had. That doctrine just failed in public. And when militaries realize their core defensive theory doesn't work, wars don't drag on the same way. They unravel. If you're finding this analysis valuable, make sure you're subscribed. The next phase is moving fast. What followed the breach made things even worse for Moscow. There was no triumphant propaganda, no claims of tactical withdrawal, no promises of a counteroffensive. State media described the situation as fluid and offered no specifics. That's not messaging. That's damage control. Within 72 hours, Russian forces issued retreat orders to adjacent sectors to prevent encirclement. Emergency redeployments were ordered from other fronts. Communications blackouts hit the region. These aren't tactical adjustments, they're panic measures. Ukraine exploited the collapse immediately, advancing before secondary positions could be established, capturing key terrain, turning a breach into a rout. And here's the part analysts find most alarming for Moscow. This failure exposed a problem Russia cannot fix quickly. They don't have the reserves to both hold ground and counterattack. Promises made to frontline commanders are no longer being fulfilled. That knowledge spreads fast. Soldiers who believed they were defending strong positions now know those positions can fall in days. Commanders promised reinforcements now know those promises may be empty. That's how morale collapses. Putin can't publicly acknowledge the scale of the defeat without accelerating that collapse. But he can't hide it either, because the soldiers already know. Defense analysts are calling this a cascading confidence failure, the most dangerous condition any army can face. If you're still watching, subscribe one more time. Moments like this define wars. A defensive collapse doesn't stay isolated. It forces emergency redeployments that weaken other sectors. It signals to troops across the front that no position is truly secure. It demonstrates enemy capabilities that exceed planning assumptions, and it reshapes the political calculus of continued support. The timing makes this even more significant. Russia's reserves are depleted. Equipment losses outpace replacement. Trained personnel are increasingly scarce. And the defensive doctrine Putin trusted has failed visibly. For Ukraine, the opportunity is enormous. Exposed positions can be exploited before Russia adapts. Momentum can be sustained, gains once considered unrealistic now look possible. The risk, of course, is desperation. Escalatory strikes, asymmetric retaliation. But the intercepted call tells us something Moscow cannot spin away. They know they're losing. When commanders say it's over on recorded lines, they're not speaking rhetorically. They're documenting collapse. So bring this back to that moment. A Russian colonel, in the middle of the night, reporting the loss of a position Putin staked everything on. Those two words weren't frustration. They were an admission. And tonight, for the first time in this war, Russian command said out loud what the Kremlin refuses to say publicly. They're losing. The silence from Moscow confirms it. The retreat confirms it. The intercepted call confirms it. This story isn't finished, but something fundamental just broke. We'll be here watching every move as the next phase unfolds. And this is where the collapse stops being a battlefield problem and starts becoming a regime problem. Because when frontline commanders admit defeat in intercepted communications, that admission doesn't stay contained. It travels, it spreads, it corrodes confidence across the entire force. If you want to stay ahead of where this is going, subscribe now. This phase of the war is moving faster than official statements can keep up with. Western intelligence agencies monitoring Russian communications after the breach noticed something immediately unusual. Not increased coordination, not emergency counterattack planning, but confusion. Orders contradicted each other. Units received withdrawal instructions and then silence. Some formations were told to hold positions that no longer existed. Others were ordered to redeploy without clear destinations. That's not strategy, that's collapse management. This is what happens when command structures lose situational awareness. When maps no longer match reality, when the chain of command is reacting instead of directing. And Ukraine exploited that confusion mercilessly. Within hours of the breach, Ukrainian units advanced into areas Russian planners assumed would never be contested. Terrain Russia believed was protected by depth offenses suddenly lay open. Secondary lines that were supposed to stabilize the front weren't manned in time, because there was no one left to man them. If this kind of breakdown matters to you, hit like and subscribe. These are the moments wars don't recover from easily. What makes this collapse especially damaging for Moscow is that it invalidates months of planning. Russia invested enormous resources into fortifications, concrete, trenches, layered obstacles, betting that static defenses could compensate for dwindling manpower. That bet just failed, and failed publicly. When soldiers see fortifications collapse in days, faith in the entire system erodes. Every defensive position now carries doubt. Every order to hold feels hollow. Military historians will tell you this is the most dangerous phase of any conflict. Not when territory is lost, but when belief is lost, and belief is evaporating. If you're still watching, subscribe again, because this doesn't stay confined to one sector. Russian units in adjacent regions are already adjusting behavior, digging in deeper, pulling back sooner, questioning orders. That hesitation alone creates openings. Ukraine understands this dynamic well. Their doctrine isn't just about breaking lines, it's about breaking confidence. And once confidence goes, momentum accelerates. That's why this intercepted call matters so much. Not because of the words themselves, but because of who said them. A senior commander, speaking up the chain, acknowledging failure without theatrics. That tells analysts this wasn't panic, it was assessment. And assessments like that ripple upward. If you value this level of analysis, subscribe. Now, this is where surface narratives break down. Inside Moscow, this creates an impossible problem. The Kremlin cannot admit the scale of the defeat without triggering broader morale collapse, but it also cannot credibly deny it to the men who lived through it. That contradiction is deadly. propaganda loses power when reality becomes undeniable. And reality just tore through one of Russia's most heavily defended sectors. Defense analysts describe this as the beginning of a cascading failure scenario. One breach forces redeployments. Redeployments weaken other sectors. Weak sectors invite new breakthroughs. The map starts changing faster than command can adapt, and Russia's ability to adapt is already strained. Equipment losses exceed production. Trained reserves are thin. Command cohesion is fraying, and the defensive doctrine Putin trusted is now discredited. If you're still here, hit subscribe one more time. The next moves could redefine the war for Ukraine. The window is clear but narrow. Exploit momentum while confusion reigns. Press before Russia stabilizes. Turn tactical success into operational collapse. For Russia, the choices are grim. Retreat and concede ground, counterattack without reserves, or escalate asymmetrically to compensate for conventional failure. None of those options are clean, and that's what makes this moment so volatile. Wars don't end when leaders give speeches. They end when commanders stop believing they can win, when they start documenting loss instead of planning victory. That's what this call represented. So, bring it back to where we began. A Russian officer, speaking into an encrypted radio in the middle of the night, reporting that the line was gone, that there was nothing left to hold. Those weren't words meant for history, but history heard them anyway. Tonight, one fact stands above everything else. Ukraine didn't just break a defensive line. They broke the illusion that Russia could hold indefinitely. The silence from Moscow confirms it. The retreat confirms it. The intercepted admission confirms. This war has entered a new phase. What falls next is the question, and we'll be here watching every move as it unfolds.